Hi, welcome to valuationpodcast.com, a podcast and video series about all things related to business and valuation. My name is Melissa Gragg, and I provide online divorce, mediation, and valuation services in St. Louis, Missouri. We're speaking today with T.H. Irwin and Jessica Klingbaum, the exEXPERTS, about advice and resources for divorcing couples. They're divorce mentors, and their mission is to educate, empower, and support people to make the best decisions for their outcomes. Welcome, TH and Jessica. How are you?
Thank you so much for having us today.
We are great. So happy to be here with you.
You guys didn't have to necessarily have that discussion, but you had to get prepared. So what did you do after sort of everything hit the fan? Then what? Because I think what people don't understand is that getting divorced is somewhat like a part-time job. You know, like you have your life, you have your kids, or a full-time. I know I wanted to be nice about it, but you know, what did you guys do? Because you get the call. You guys know that this is my line. I'm not interested in crossing this line. Then what? You know, because you guys have built resources for women to go directly now to that. But what did you guys start to do at that point?
Well, that's also how exEXPERTS started. I was trying to educate myself. I was looking online and I couldn't find anything. I was like, Jessica, there's literally nothing out here. I have to rely on my $500 plus an hour attorney and all of her little peons to give me information. This is 14 years ago. So now we feel now there's way too much information out there, but there was nothing out there for us. So my reaction was get a lawyer, find a friend, had a lawyer, meet a shark. He's a bad man. That's it. That is not the way to do it, by the way, even back then. And certainly so many great resources, including exEXPERTS, shameless plug, so that you don't have to do it that way. Mm-hmm. Knowledge is power. Educate yourself. You have to learn for yourself what you want, what's doable. I was married to a narcissist. An amicable divorce was not possible. It just wasn't. There's no reasoning with somebody who's clinically diagnosed with that personality. So I had a different road that I knew I would have to follow. But for Jessica, she was able to sit down at the table with him. And if they didn't sit at the table, they could have certainly explored collaborative and mediation. Mm-hmm. But educate yourself on your options. Find the money. Do you have access to your finances? I did always have access to the finances. And he was, air quotes, everybody, doing me a favor of taking that on because I had 3 little kids and I was working, right? So he wasn't so smart though, because he still charged everything on our cards. Mm-hmm. And so it was all there. I just never looked until I looked. So how to prepare for this conversation? What I did when I got the call was I called my brother. And as I said, you know, this ties back to my mother. My parents were in Egypt, so they couldn't have been in a better place for me dealing with this than on the other side of the world, so that I could finally think for myself without having other voices in my head. So think clearly about what you need. I needed support. I needed my brother. I needed to know where my kids were. And I needed to make sure I had money. Those were my 3 must-have things before I even called him to tell him I knew what was happening and I'm never living with you again. And that was like so great to be able to speak up for myself. Like I hadn't done that in so long. And all of a sudden I had a voice and I had my brother next to me. So I was going to be okay and I was going to be safe. And then I went to my brother and sister-in-laws with my kids to just kind of let everything kind of absorb. As happy as I was, the extent of the lying and the deceit was unbelievable. 4 years of being absent from a family, being absent from your kids, the lies, all of it. I was like, oh my God, this is so kind of like unraveling all that. And then I was calling Jessica. I'm like, they weren't in Costa Rica on a boys trip. They were there with their girlfriends at the Ritz-Carlton, and
Mhm.
they weren't in Vegas with whatever. They were, so all of the pieces were becoming very clear. And when you have that much information at once, you do not want to show your cards.
Mhm.
Call, you're concise. This isn't working. We'll regroup when in a week when I have time to let it sink in. And then the next thing you do is you have to tell your kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
What
mean, I
about you,
think,
Jessica?
well, again, like we were both the first time for sure caught off guard. So there was like not that much time to kind of mobilize. I think for me, my immediate thoughts were more like, what do I want this process to look like on the other side? What do
Mm.
I want our relationship to be after the divorce for ourselves, for me, for the kids? Um, and that was really more of what I focused on. I had a career that I knew I could support myself on it. Um, I don't know whether or not there were, I definitely left money on the table, but I kind of knew that for me, in order to have the relationship that we have today, I did not want to go down the road of forensic accountants and things like that. I just wanted to be done. I'll take my stuff, you take your stuff, and it can be over. And it was more figuring out like the custody of the kids and things like that, which also really wasn't that challenging. We both live in New York City. We were both staying in the city. Um, I really, for me, it was more, I mean, I had gotten my phone call on a Thursday night. I had a job that I was working at on Friday. I was starting a brand new job on Monday, the biggest job of my career to date at that time, like running my own show at a national network. And I really like had to focus on work. And I think for me, it was a blessing in disguise because I laid in bed and cried for 48 hours that whole weekend. And I got up Monday morning and I started my new job. And I couldn't talk about it with anyone there because I was afraid that if anyone knew what was happening, they'd think that I wasn't like up for the task. And I was completely focused on what I was doing at work all of the hours of the day. And I think that that was kind of how it sort of all sank in for me. Like, I didn't have a lot of time to prepare. I was just like, what do I want to do with all of this? And we did deal with it ourselves. And it took a long time, not like TH's, but it wasn't like we were in a rush. Like I wasn't like we were already weren't living together. I had already kicked him out. So I was kind of like, okay, like now let's figure out what we're gonna do and what this is gonna look like. I would say to anybody who's in a situation unlike ours, whether they know their spouse is having an affair and they know they want out, or whether they're just feeling unhappy and they're thinking that a divorce is ultimately what they're going to have to do. I think the steps to preparation are make sure you do have access to all of your financials. Make sure you have passwords to all of the accounts. Make sure you know where all of the accounts are. Make sure you know how much is left on your mortgage or how much you're paying every month in rent. Where is the money coming from? Have your accountant's information. You just have to know, you have to have all of your ducks in a row because unfortunately, TH and I hear far too often of people having reactionary conversations with their spouses about the fact that they're not happy and they're getting divorced. And now they're like, oh, but by the way, can I get the password to the checking account? And it's like, fuck that. So if you are able to tamper your feelings and your reactions down long enough to make sure that you are prepared financially to just know where everything is, that to me, I think is the best step of preparation.
Well, and I will say, there's a lot of information that is usually in your own house,
Yeah.
in your files and your records and things like that are kind of kept there. That, if you make drastic decisions at the beginning, you may not have access to those types of, like I've
Correct.
seen really narcissistic spouses react and behave almost, like we sometimes call it scorched earth. And so it's sort of like, I will burn this to the ground before I let you have any of it.
Yes.
if that means paying attorneys or preventing you from having it. So that financial knowledge is an important piece. I have some other suggestions that I might say. It's more for an offline conversation of what to do.
Gotta protect.
But you got to protect yourself, and you have to know where you're vulnerable, and to make sure. So you kind of have to turn off that emotional brain and say, okay, I'm going to be okay. My kids are going to be okay. But like, do I have access to money to fight this or to survive for the next 60, 90, 100 days till we figure out even things, right?